following program is a production of Ho'ike Kauaʻi Community Media.
Aloha Kauaʻi. I am Smita Narang, your new host and producer of Kauaʻi Voices on Ho'ike Kauaʻi Community Media. This show highlights local groups and individuals who are making a big impact, whether through art or activism. The people I've met through this show inspire me to keep creating, to keep telling stories, and to get involved with the causes that move me to action. For this episode of Kauaʻi Voices, I visited with Tim Leichliter of Kauaʻi Coral Restoration Nursery. You can check out my 10-minute video on Ho'ike TV's YouTube channel and keep listening right here for an extended cut of that conversation with Tim. In this podcast, you'll learn about the science of coral conservation, the importance of relationships, and hear about the unique highs and lows of coral restoration work. From unexpected disasters to enlightening discoveries, sobering ecological facts, and hope for the future. My conversation with Tim took place at milu Fishpond on Kauaʻi, where the restoration nursery is located. Due to those surroundings, you might hear some wind noises during the interview. You'll also be hearing from me throughout the podcast to share my own insights and to help clear up some of those technical terms and concepts. Please remember that all coral collection and handling that we talk about was done with special permits issued by the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Department of Aquatic Resources. Please respect our reefs and never touch or handle coral unless you are specifically authorized to do so. That being said, we now invite you to join us on this deep dive and wild ride of coral restoration.
Aloha, I'm Tim Leichliter. I am the president and director of operations of Ho'omalu Kai, as well as the project manager for Kauaʻi Coral Restoration Nursery. We got together about 7 years ago, a group of my friends and I, and we just had this crazy idea that we wanted to start Kauaʻi's first coral restoration nursery, and took lots of leaps of faith and sort of sacrifices and learned a whole lot along the way the last 7 years. And we finally have manifested that dream and started the first coral restoration nursery on Kauaʻi, and the most special place that it could have ever happened at, also at milu Fishpond or aupele. Milu is a super special place. It is a vahipana for Kauaʻi, and it is a place where just within Hawaiian mythology that Pele came to first. They believe from the Marquesian Islands, and Namaka Okaha'i, her sister, the sea goddess, followed her. So this was an old volcanic cinder pit crater at some point, and it was filled with seawater later on with those conflicts that Namaka Okaha'i had with Pele. It's super special because it's the only one of its kind on Kauaʻi, and the only one of its kind in all of the main Hawaiian Islands. A volcanic cinder pit that was filled with seawater and is now acting as a local ia, essentially, a fish pond. The ohana and the caretakers of this place is the Palama Ohana and Kauaʻi Sea Farm. It's an inspiring place to be in, and it's lots of inspiring people down here. And we're grateful to kind of work in coordination with all of them to kind of help to restore the pond, but also to help to work on projects here that are using more of that modern science approach to restore other ecosystems outside of the pond.
As Tim said, Kauaʻi's first coral restoration nursery was an idea that was hatched over 7 years ago and required connecting with the right people in the right place. And that was just in preparation for what comes now, actually growing coral. We'll get to hear from Tim about who has contributed to his methodology along the way and how exactly the process works.
Our methodology for the Kauaʻi Coral Restoration Nursery is modeled mostly off of actually the Hawaii Coral Restoration Nursery, the first one that was started on Oahu's Sand Islands. Right after the big coral bleaching event in 2015 and 16, Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology really stepped up the game for trying to figure out what the best ways of restoration are. And so that was the Hawaii Coral Restoration Nursery through the state sort of started through that sort of catastrophe that happened throughout the whole state. They were like, we need a state nursery to address this. There's so many people that really cared. There wasn't many, but there was like the right, like I'd say like, 30 or so people that really cared at that time. And they worked really hard to find what's the fastest, most solid, sustainable way to do coral restoration, and in a nursery setting, and like fast as much as possible, right? And they came up with this methodology. To have like something that is tried and true like that, being from South Florida, where when we lost all of our reefs where I grew up and all the reefs that I knew when I was a kid are no longer there, everyone just went, they hit the ground running with restoration, and it was the #1 restoration place in the world, but they didn't take the time to really establish a solid methodology that's going to be something that's going to be successful and good for biodiversity and all that stuff into the future, and looking at like relative resilience towards, outplanting. So we're super grateful to learn from people that have already done this in Hawaii, like the Hawaii Coral Restoration Nursery and the Coral Resilience Lab.
Well, it all starts with collecting what's called corals of opportunity from the local environment, in our case, Ahukini Landing, near our airport, a place where these corals might not survive long-term on their own.
Corals of opportunity, for like the general sense of it in the coral restoration field in Hawaii anyway right now, is a coral that's broken off, or it's just settled in the wrong spot and it's falling or it's tumbling around somewhere on the bottom. And that's just the loose fragment of a coral sometimes. And then the idea for us is that we're considering corals that are growing on these man-made structures that are degrading, also corals of opportunity in our view of it. So we think like maybe that, this isn't scientifically proven, but we think that maybe the coral from places like that might be more strong and resilient to, work with for restoration. They might have some of those traits that are already resilient to go into, the next phase of whatever we've got to experience with the climate and with ocean rising temperatures and things like that. So that's what we collected from Ahukini Landing. We found a Montipora capitata brown rice coral colony that we took from a tire that was falling down. We also found a Parietes lobata colony that was within our permit restrictions to collect as well. And we wanted to try these 2 different species, and that colony was growing on like an iron bar that was on its way down to the sediment. And there's lots of that out there. There's mooring balls that are out there that acquire coral on them. So we really would just want to, we're not trying to take healthy coral from the ecosystem. We want to take this coral that most likely won't survive based on where it's growing. And even better if we can take it from an environment that does not make sense for us anyway, for coral to be growing, that's like dirty, like a harbor or something like that. Like anyone that's looked at Ahukini Landing in the water, you can't necessarily always see the bottom. And when you're diving, you can't really see your hand in front of your face. It's most days. And so it's like, how is these corals even surviving in the environment that they're in? And so we're choosing these corals that maybe possibly are also going to be stronger. Maybe it's something about these corals that are growing in these really gnarly environments. They've learned to inherit these stronger traits that can then be passed on to hopefully the wild generations, which is the work that that we're inspired by from the Coral Resilience Lab through Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology.
Next comes quarantining the coral to make sure it's healthy enough for microfragmenting, which means cutting the coral into smaller pieces that can then be propagated to create more coral. The final step will come later this year, planting the microfragmented coral pyramids back into the environment where they can be monitored for growth over time. As perfect as this plan seems, you can never be completely prepared. Tim reveals that the restoration nursery nearly burned down with the corals inside, and why the quarantine process had to be restarted. It's a good reminder that no matter how great you plan or how well you're following a methodology, restoration workers and conservationists are real people who can find themselves in some pretty real situations. We're just glad that everyone, including the corals, made it out okay. Without further ado, let's hear from the person who was there for it all.
We did have a fire that burned down Kauaʻi Sea Farm's main hatchery area, which was super detrimental, but at the same time, this like spark of fire in all of us to just keep going and do what we got to do and build it better, build it stronger, build it smarter. So hats off to all the Kauaʻi Sea Farm guys, Thane and Dave and Lena, Uncle Steven, for just like holding it down and keeping going during that time. And for us, we were fortunate enough to keep our structure. However, the fire happened on day 29 of our 30-day quarantine. So when we take coral in from another place, there's just biocontrol for making sure that these corals that we took don't have signs of disease or other deterring factors that would prohibit them from doing well and growing out in our system and getting outplanted later on. So 30 days uninterrupted. If you see something, then that 30 days it restarts, right? So for us, we had a fire on day 29 of our 30-day quarantine. Since that happened, microfragmenting got set back. So we restarted our quarantine with the idea that like, hey, that was a big setback. Let's just see if anything is stressing these corals out. So day 60 of our since collection, we plan on doing our full official microfragmenting, and we'll be microfragmenting our Matapa capitata and our Parietes lobata and planting them onto these pyramids that will hopefully grow out in a very short time. The Hawaii Coral Restoration Nursery is able to do it in about a year or less. These corals are the same colony essentially when we collect them. So when they are planted and they're next to each other and they grow next to each other, they fuse and then they cover this whole colony. And that's the size of a sexually mature colony in the wild. And we're planting some outside No Milu Fishpond and some back to Ahukini Landing where we collected from. So we're really not trying to like take and not put back from wherever we take. It's always this like shared thing. So we do the restoration workdays down here as well as the nursery. And we work really heavily with Restore Hanamaulu to protect Hanamaulu Bay, where these corals came from. So we really are heavily invested in both areas of where we took coral and where we're planting coral and where we're growing coral. And we think that that's just somehow like works as a good model for, you know, working on a community-based coral restoration project like this.
We'll hear a little bit more about the inspiring conservation efforts happening at the No Milu Fish Pond and how many people caring for this place together has brought about real positive results in a short amount of time. There's even been some happy coincidences, like the mineral levels from the water in the pond providing the perfect conditions for the coral nursery.
Kauaʻi Sea Farm, hats off to those guys. I actually was an employee from in the past as like a technician and learned so much under Dave Anderson and Lena Lumwan. And I think, you know, honestly thankful for the Palama family and Lynn and Thane Taylor for believing in that mission. But they, before coral restoration was part of their repertoire, they started with the idea of farming clams, oysters, things that would help with food security. And then when Hurricane Eva and Hurricane Iniki came and closed up all these aowais and systems that connect this, what's used as a local ia to the ocean, then everything kind of died, you know, and it was really just left stagnant for a lot of years. And it wasn't until, I guess, maybe the younger generation and the older generation started to kind of like form this Kauaʻi Sea Farm idea, but also before that, just care a little bit more about the place to just come down and take buckets and shovel out the aowai and get it started to, you know, breathe again. Since they started the hatchery, the pond has also got healthier and more productive, and so the water quality has gotten better. But it's pretty incredible to see like the repercussions of just a couple of years of work in their hatchery and the results of what ends up in the pond just from their work. For this project, one of the main questions was that, like, will you be able to keep corals alive with this water? Because this isn't the ocean, and they came from the ocean. But what's cool is what I told you before with the Pele Namako Kauaʻi thing. This was a volcanic cinder pit, and it was filled with ocean water. So it basically is ocean water. Obviously, it was, like I told you also, that it was closed up for so many years. But since we've opened it and stuff, the salinity is the same as the ocean. So the salt content is the same, pretty much generally the same as the ocean. The nutrients are a little bit higher. And the calcium, which is one of the trace elements, is a little bit higher as well. But that's actually good for coral. So it turned out like our 60 days in, we have lots of coral growth. We have 100% survival. We're utilizing the pond water. We are filtering it down to 1 micron and using a UV sterilizer, and we have it on a recirculating system. So there is some manipulating of the water, but the general composition of the water is the same. And that's proving to be successful with the growth rates. It's proving to be successful with survival. And it's just really inspiring to know that this water works there. So that's the idea with this proof of concept project. We are permitted for more coral. So in theory, we could collect more coral. However, knowing that we're sort of redesigning our whole system and setup, our goal right now is to get through this cohort, since it's Hawaii's first fire corals, right? We don't have fire corals in Hawaii, but they survived a big fire, and we're going to get them through to outplanting, and then we're going to smartly redesign at the same time our new kind of facility in partnership with Kauaʻi Sea Farm, and so that by the time we go to reapply for our permit and recollect coral and do this to scale, we'll be able to do it in a larger facility, more streamlined, safer, smarter, and then just, like well coordinated with all of the players and projects that are happening down here. So we're all connected again.
For every win in conservation, there's always a bigger battle against the threats to our ecosystems. Tim talks about the significance of preserving and restoring our reefs globally, as well as what we can do locally to help protect them. Things like wearing reef-safe sunscreen, getting rid of cesspools, volunteering, and even donating to organizations like his.
We are absolutely a part of the reefs and a part of the system. Just within the Kumulipo, the Hawaiian creation chant, the first organism that's chanted into Hanao, what came about was the coral polyp, and then everything was built off of there. And if you look at islands, yes, there's a lot of it formed by volcanic activity, but then you look at some of the other islands, a lot of it's formed, and maybe the coral comes first after that. Volcanic activity, and then it builds more structure from there, and then other things can come about. So, scientifically, corals host and are responsible for providing benefits to 25% of all marine life. So without them, you would have no nearshore marine ecosystems for the most part. You'd have some, but not nearly in the areas where they exist. They're so much more productive if there's coral. And, you talk to fishermen and it's about habitat. And what is coral? It's habitat. It's a place to live for these fish, and a place to hide, and a place to get to a good size that ultimately will feed us. So, what happens when we talk about losing entire ecosystems is huge, and especially losing literally, it doesn't happen on an ecosystem level. It would happen like that. It happens when you lose a keystone species that support most of the other life within that area. They go away, everything else goes away. So it's a really important thing for us that we don't think that what we're doing today is going to save the reefs literally tomorrow. But hopefully in 20 years, we'd have some sort of understanding of this, just like the people that work in growing plants per se and trees for forest restoration have learned for over centuries now, that we can have those tools and to be of scale to actually make big impacts and big differences. Hopefully we don't need that, right? Hopefully all of what we're doing is to add benefits to coral reefs that are already thriving. But the signs don't show that. So it'd be nice to have something to be able to be proactive if and when those things happen. Also, just like if you yourself want to help take care of the coral, don't step on it. Wear reef safe sunscreen, right? All the things they say is pretty simple. Coral takes care of itself for the most part, as long as we take care of the environment around it. So, say if you're a homeowner and you've got a cesspool and you're close to the ocean, there's so much research that shows that that's not helping the corals. It's actually probably hurting the corals having that situation be a reality. So whatever ways we can convert those to, even septic is better, right? Or just some sort of more sustainable waste system that's not going into the waters. And if people want to help not inside the nursery, hey, any donation helps. The fact that we had donations, a huge one. Thank you guys for the donation Kauaʻi Marathon. We thought we were going to do some other cool stuff with that, but that helped us to restore and keep our structure solid after the fires. So you never know when you're going to be able to need just sort of unexpendable money. We apply for grants and we get some, and we're always actively going after them, but that's another job that could be, hopefully, if somebody wants to help us with grants, that'd be awesome. But we if we have donation money, we can do whatever we see fit. We now need to buy a generator and inverter and all that stuff and sump pump and make sure our systems are running. It's we can't necessarily always do that with grant money because it is already committed to certain budget lines and categories. But with donation money, it does go such a long way, because it is okay, when stuff hits the fan, that's the money we can use. We can't necessarily dip into our grant funds, because then we got issues of our budget being off and things like that. So any donations is huge. That helps us to certify more kids too, and certify more of the community and get them trained down here. Everyone can do something also just by talking about it. Not many people know. If you're watching this, you learned a lot. Go learn more. There's other things. Go look at the Hawaii Coral Restoration Nursery. Go look at the Coral Resilience Lab. They all have super cool videos out there online, and you can learn so much just by YouTube scrolling and stuff. And then if you care about corals that much at that point, start talking to your friends about it. Start talking to people that have no connection to the ocean, and make them take a deep breath. We've all probably seen this one, but it's where did half of your breath came from the ocean, right? And maybe corals didn't do it, but corals help to support the other life that helps to support the phytoplankton that's giving you that breath. And I think that's the more of the connections that we can make to we do a very good job of educating. I think my generation knows we get oxygen from trees, and that's how we were able to breathe, and that's why we should love them so much. And if we could just think about everything in the ocean the same way, I think we'll be going places.
Essential to restoring reefs on Kauaʻi is the involvement of the local community, and especially young people who can carry this work forward into the future. Kauaʻi Coral Restoration Nursery, along with Ho'omalu Kekai and Kauaʻi Ocean Awareness, are actively working to create pathways for people to get involved in ocean conservation through volunteer opportunities and professional training.
We want to keep this going for the next generation, and that's why we took so long to build a strong foundation that we can hopefully do that upon. And on top of, adding there are ecosystems on Kauaʻi we know are degraded. To bring some of those back, that's our goal in a small way, and to create inspiration around it in our community that anyone can do it. And this isn't rocket science. And we want to create career pathways that kids don't have to leave Kauaʻi, or people that are interested don't have to leave Kauaʻi to do this stuff. They can stay here. They can get the certifications they need. They can get the experience they need. And if they want to restore reefs where they surf every day, where they dive every day, where they get fish every day, they can. They have that opportunity now. And that, for me, like wanting to do this stuff myself personally for like over 7 years, that's the biggest win, is that the next generation and whoever is interested in our community now, for the first time ever, has an opportunity on Kauaʻi to get involved in this stuff. And we have opportunities for up to 8 scholarships for certifications all the way through rescue diver, thanks to the County of Kauaʻi through their innovation grant program. We work through PADI, so you would start with open water diver, and then we would get you onto advanced open water, and then onto rescue diver, which then we know, like, if we dive with you, you should be able to, like, we're confident that you can rescue us, we can rescue you, you know, and then we can kind of get into that more scientific diving training, which is a lot of marine debris removal with corals. And that's a very delicate thing, because you're getting real close to touching corals, and in theory, you're not supposed to be touching corals, but we're saving these corals. So to be very delicate about that is something that we would train. And then we also train like methodology on our surveys that the states uses, the same methodology that they use. We use to look at our reefs, and we would train methodology also on looking at like collection, you know, like we have a certain survey that we do for coral collection, and we look at like different invasive species that are around the area, how much coral covers around the area, the sizes of the corals around the area, how much, you know, genetic diversity we feel like is around the area with those corals. And we're now doing those surveys for outplanting locations. So to help us to do surveys prior to our outplanting to determine the best spots for that, they can actually be involved in that process. So reach out to us. I would also put a big shout out for Kauaʻi Ocean Awareness. Is just got funded for a similar project. And so we'll be working in collaboration and coordination with each other. But if you know Captain Tara Leota or KauaiOceanAwareness.org, you can reach out there. Our website's ho'omalukekai.com, or you can reach us the same way, since we're the same organization, as KauaiCoralRestoration.com. So I wish I knew that people were nicer. Like, I was always intimidated by so-and-so that's got this big thing going on, and so-and-so that's got this big thing going on. Like, just reach out, you know, like you can reach out on our website. I can't promise I'm going to get back to you like that next hour, but maybe the next day, the next week, you'll hear from me, I promise, or hear from one of our team. And, you know, if you're interested in this stuff, I would say reach out and please come to us and let us know, because it does take a village to do this stuff, whether it's, you know, feeding the coral like Samita helped me with today, like that takes extra hands. Microfragmenting the coral like we're going to do later this week, that takes extra hands. Like, there's all these little opportunities, maybe not every day yet. We get to scale, that would be the case. But if you want to get your foot in the door in this stuff, this is a good time. So every second Saturday, we have something going on at No Milu, our special community workdays. So we offer that sign up link on our website. If you go to ho'omalukekais.com and click on volunteer, it's a great time. A little bit of work, a little bit of weed removal, a little bit of rock moving. Sometimes the tasks always change, but we have a lot of veteran volunteers. We have new people every time, and we cook up an awesome meal for all of our volunteers afterwards. From a lot of ingredients are from the pond, thanks to the Kauai Sea Farm staff and the Ohana.
And so we close this interview where we started it, at No Milu Fishpond. I want to express my gratitude to the place and the people and organizations that made this story possible. And I'm so thankful that I got to be part of it. If you also want to be part of this amazing local effort to restore our ecosystems on Kauai, you can find more information at KauaiCoralRestoration.com or ho'omalukekai.com. Until next time, this is Smita with Kauaʻi Voices on Ho'ike.
Allegra Gaines is Ho'ike's president and CEO, while Lego Sameta is the administrative assistant. Smita Narong handles production and education services. Max Richardson also handles production, but IT services as well. Trisha Allen is Ho'ike's news and events producer, and Olivia Franco is our county producer and social media manager.